Good day, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us in the world today. Welcome to our webinar today, talking about teak in Central America, Panama, and Nicaragua. We have some great information for you all today, inclusive of some bundles that we have toward the end of the year here. But before we jump in and get started, if you've been with us in our webinars before, go ahead and find the Q&A section and let us know what part of the world you're joining in from today. And we will get started. All right, James, glad to see you here, James. Thanks for joining us from Puerto Rico. Tony, coming in from Springfield. Robin, South Florida. Daryl in Portugal. Hi, Daryl. Thanks for joining us today. We have Shivaji from Toronto, Tyler from Washington State, John Hicks from Seattle. Great group of people just joining in here, mostly from the United States, but we do have some folks from around the world. Thank you all again for joining us for today's webinar. We'll get right started here in just a second with our host, Mike Cobb. Mike, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. I literally have just come from another presentation to this one, and we did not check to see if the screen share works or the slide. So hopefully it does, and we'll get started here. I don't know. We might, Michael, I hate to have to ask you to change slides. I wonder if you could give me screen sharing capability.
Hi, Mike. I'm going to give you remote access now. Just go ahead and click on your screen when you see the notice.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay.
If you can.
All right, Michael. So do I now have screen sharing capability?
There you go, sir.
It says you're sharing, so you need to stop sharing. Sorry, everybody, while we fix our technical difficulties here.
Alrighty, Mike, if you go ahead and click on your keyboard or mouse.
Yeah.
On the actual PowerPoint slide, you should be able to go ahead and switch slides here. There you go.
All right, very good. All right, thank you, Michael. All right, well, let's go back one maybe. Yeah, and I like to start at this point talking about goals, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, this investment is your investment, and it has to align with the goals that you have for that investment. And we've really kind of found that most people who are looking to invest in teak timber overseas really have one of these five, or a combination, it could be, but security, right? The security of having an investment overseas, the diversification, obviously very, very important. Legacy, we'll talk about that and how that really is a very inherent part of a timber investment, and teak specifically. Freedom, we do talk about that. A lot of people have decided to own teak for a residency, which is the freedom of the individual. And then obviously plan B. So a lot of people worried about what happens if, you know, if things go off the rails, and what am I going to do? And the plan B is that particular element. So it could be any one of these, it could be any combination of these that really drive people to want to make an investment in teak timber. So we'll talk about each of these a little bit, but what we're going to do up front is just sort of outline the big picture, then we'll dig into the details, and then we'll come back to the big picture again. All right, so we had mature teak. I started my very first plantation in Panama back in 1999. I started looking for the property in 1998. We purchased the property, we planted the teak in August of 99, and that plantation has sold out. We have since added additional plantations. One plantation is a 16-year-old teak plantation that we purchased when it was 14 years old. We've broken it up into quarter-acre parcels. Each of those parcels is just under $20,000. And over the next, I guess it's 9-10 years, that value will increase to a little over $100,000. So it's a very nice, kind of 5-6x over a 9 to 10 year period. So that's one investment, a little shorter time cycle. But we also just purchased a giant piece of property and we're planting baby teak. We've already planted some, we'll continue planting every year. And that is a 25-year cash flow cycle. And that's really where we start to talk about legacy and generational wealth stewardship. So depending upon your goals, one or both of these may make sense for you. And we'll look at, again, a deeper understanding of the reasons why some might. That was Panama. In Nicaragua, same kind of thing. We have some teak that is already 1 year old. It was planted last year. We have some newborn teak. Again, options to own it for $7,000, a little over $7,300, or $6,880, just under $7,000, turning into a little over $90,000 across a 24 or 25 year time period. So very, very nice return on investment, very high IRRs. Again, we're going to look at a lot of this stuff in greater detail. So why are a lot of people owning teak and timber generally, but teak specifically? There is a really strong sense of giving back to Mother Nature. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I would not describe myself as a tree hugger, but I would absolutely describe myself as a conservationist. I grew up hunting and fishing. I spent a lot of time in the woods as a child and as a young adult. And for me, the protection and the stewardship of that resource is critically important. And it's not that we shouldn't use it or we should care for it. We should protect it. We should steward that resource. And one of the ways that we do that with timber is we replace what has been illegally logged. There's a lot of illegal logging, but we can also take land that was cleared for pasture, which we have now done on 3 separate occasions, taken pasture land that was deforested to produce, in most cases, grazing land, sometimes crops, and turn it back into forest. So again, this is the idea of giving back, and it's the stewardship of the land. And if we look at the numbers, the statistics are staggering. Half the world's tropical forests have been cleared or degraded, illegally logged. Half of the world's tropical forest, right? So it's a huge number, and there are laws against it, of course. I mean, the various countries are putting in the laws, but the monetary incentives for people to poach, I'll use that word poach in this case, illegally log, is strong. The value of timber, teak, timber, mahogany, and other species is very, very high. And even with the risk of getting fined or going to jail or getting in trouble in some way, people still do it because of the monetary opportunity to log, poach, deforest illegally. So it's ongoing. It continues to be ongoing. And what that's really produced is this incredible supply-demand imbalance. And the number is that the rate of harvesting, both illegal and legal, so both illegal and legal harvesting, exceeds the supply, the new supply, by 8 to 12 times. So what we've done is we've created this incredible supply and demand imbalance. Far more is being harvested than is being replanted. And sometimes we think about supply and demand curve. We think, well, then all of a sudden, no problem. It'll supply goes way down, the prices go way up, people will plant teak. And that's true, right? But the harvest cycle on teak is 25 years. So no matter, you can't hurry 25 years. So this supply and demand imbalance favors the people who get ahead of this imbalance, the people who are planting trees right now, who are investing in timber right now, because as that supply and demand imbalance grows, and the price of teak goes up, more people are going to come and plant teak. But if it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the teak that we plant today that you might decide you want to own today gets harvested in 25 years, or some of the 16-year-old teak gets harvested in 9 years, right? You're way ahead of that curve. So you're filling the need, you're anticipating this need that is being created by this supply and demand imbalance. One of the things that we see and we track is, the demand for wood versus global population. And global population, I believe, has just exceeded 8 billion people, and it continues to go up. Some countries are going down, but other countries going up. India is, I think, the most populous country in the world now. I don't know that that's an official statistic, but it looks like it will be announced fairly soon. And so we look at the big consumers of teak, China, India, right? Those are two huge consumers of teak, and we can see that the demand for wood and the global population has really tracked very, very closely. Here are some statistics about future projections of population. China at 1 billion, India at 1.5 billion people by the end of this century. So again, we see this incredible population push. We know that the price of wood has tracked population growth for centuries. And so it doesn't have to continue that way, but it's highly likely that it will. The interesting thing about this chart right here is that we can see, going back to the early 2000s, 2002, when plantation teak really started to come off in larger and larger numbers, how the value of plantation teak by about 2006, I think, 2005, 2006, actually exceeded the price of illegal lumber. And that had a lot to do with the various buyers, right? The big Home Depot, Lowe's, the big industrial users of teak. They started to demand Forestry Council certifications. They didn't want illegal wood. And so, as the illegal wood was coming out of the woods, out of the forest, it was being sold to, secondary producers or local producers. And the price it commanded was much, much less. The Forestry Council certified woods, the harvested from plantations, you can see the red line has actually grown and grown, and now far exceeds the value of any kind of illegally logged lumber, which is a wonderful thing, right? We're rewarding the people who have made plantation teak. And again, we talked about the laws that protect the forest, right? There are tons of laws, and as more and more consciousness happens, as more and more people are able to protect the forest, the amount of illegal logging will certainly go down. It continues to drop, but I think we talked about the incentives to take trees out of the woods illegally is very, very high in the form of price, even if it's not as high as plantation teak, but it's still very, very lucrative to do so. So again, as plantation teak continues to appreciate in value and we get more and more consciousness about protecting our forests, we're going to see that plantation teak will continue to far outstrip the value of any kind of illegally logged lumber. Above average returns, ultra safe due to real value. And this is something I think that's easy to understand, but maybe hard to digest, right? This idea of, the above average return, IRRs in the low double digits, I think 11, 12% IRRs, which are phenomenal, and ultra safe. You're planting a tree and it just grows for 25 years. And the nice thing about teak is actually it's resistant to fire. It drops its leaves in the dry season. You can get a fire in the forest, but it generally burns at the ground level. It doesn't burn the trees. It's prized for its extreme hardness and its oils, which is why it's used in yachts and other boating environments, or decking, deck chairs, for outdoor patio furniture, that kind of thing, because it withstands rot incredibly and mildew. And so it is the type of wood that's very, very durable, and it is a safe investment with very, very good returns. Let me tell you the bad news. The bad news is, I actually don't think it's bad news, but a lot of people think it's bad news, is that the growing cycle is 25 years. And a lot of people think, 25 years. Well, let me just say that back in 1998, when I started looking for property in Panama and bought that cattle pasture, 100-acre cattle pasture, and planted 100 acres of teak on it back in 1999, I said to some folks that were kind of giving me a hard time. It was a Rotary meeting, actually, and the folks I would sit with at breakfast, they'd be teasing me about going to Panama and, what are you doing? 25 years? Are you crazy? And the answer I gave them then, which I absolutely believe today, okay, is this: that in 25 years, I'm either going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this, or in 25 years, I'm not going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this, right? Our trees are 23 years old. Let me assure you, I am really glad I did that 23 years ago, right? And sometimes we think about cash flow and we think, what's cash flow? Cash flow is, a paycheck that we get every week or every other week. It's a rent check that we get from our renters if we have properties, right? And many of the people on this webinar, I looked at the list of people here earlier when we were logging in. A lot of you I know, and I know that you're into properties. You own homes and long-term rentals, and you get a rent check every month, right? And some stocks pay dividends quarterly or annually, right? And so when we think about cash flow, we think about weekly, biweekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. But guess what? 25 years is a cash flow cycle. It's a 25-year cash flow cycle, 4 times a century. And we might think, 25 years is a long time. But you know what? It comes. I mean, I'm 23 years into this plantation. And again, I'm really glad I did this. And I hope that you understand the wisdom of planning that far in advance. And when we're talking about an investment of $7,000, $6,880 for a quarter acre of teak, right? Most of us have more than enough money that we can live on, right? We can pay our bills, we can do the things we want to do, and we're squirreling away some money, some a little bit, some a lot, right? And some of us, we have a lot squirreled away, right? And for a small, tiny amount of money, we can put that away and we can let it compound at an IRR of 11% for 25 years. I don't know of any other investment that will do that. Do you? IRR of 11% over 25 years, compounding consistently for that period of time, right? And if we understand that in 25 years, we're going to get a harvest of, of $94,000, and we can give that to ourselves if we're still around, our kids could get it. In fact, many people take and title the property in the name of a child or the name of a grandchild or a great-grandchild, right? Because they might get 1 or 2 or 3 harvests in their lifetime, right? Because when you harvest the plantation, you take the teak out, you plant baby teak, and in 25 years it harvests again. It's a 25-year cash flow cycle. And again, ultra conservative, ultra safe. We look at inflation, this chart, I love this chart. The inflation, whatever the rates were till today, what's that? I can't read that number, about 75%. S&P is up about 200%, right? Timber investors up over 300, but a lot less volatility, right? The trees just grow. They just grow. They just grow. A $10,000 investment would be worth, $1.5 million today if it was invested in 1970 through 2009. Again, these are the kind of IRRs and the kind of compounding numbers that are just hard to fathom, right? But again, most people don't think 25 years. They don't think about teak. They don't think about timber. My buddy Steve Sugarroot, I love his quote because it had happened in 2008, 9, 10, 11, when the real estate market was dying right here in the States anyway, right? The trees, they grow through recessions. They grow through wars. They grow through stock and real estate crashes. They grow through everything. They give built-in investment growth that isn't guaranteed with the stock, right? It doesn't matter that, the real estate market's down, the trees are still growing, right? So again, Steve really understands the power of timber as an asset class. Now, there we go. There's the slide, 2008 to 2012. Trees kept growing, right? And so again, we're looking for non-correlated investments for some part of our portfolio. And timber, teak specifically in this case, is an incredibly non-correlated, investment product that serves us very, very well when the markets are gyrating. The trees keep growing. And guess what? The people who understand that are the world's wealthiest people. Look at some of these names: Malone, the endowment funds for Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Ted Turner. These guys all own millions of acres of timber, millions of acres of timber. Why? Because they understand that cash flowing at 10, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever that timber cycle is, different species have different cycles, right? But if you have oak, for example, or cherry or walnut, you're on the same as teak. You're on a 25 to 30-year cash flow cycle. These guys own a ton of it because they understand that they're either going to need money in 30 years, or their children are going to need money, or their grandchildren are going to need money. And you can put something to work with incredible IRRs over a long period of time and create and steward incredible wealth into the future. Again, very, very wealthy people, they get the joke. They invest a ton in timber because it just simply makes sense. And what we were able to do as a company was take the plantation concept that really had only been for the uber wealthy folks who could afford to go in and buy 100 acres or 500 acres or 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres, whatever it was, right? To go in and buy a piece of property, hire a forestry company to come in and manage that plantation for them, pay for 25 years, and then get this giant return in the end, right? You had to have incredible staying power. So what we did was, you know what? We could do this. We could break it up into smaller packages that people could afford, the average investor, not the super uber wealthy people. And here are some pictures of some folks that own teak. This happens to be our plantation in Panama, the original plantation that's now sold out. I do see a tree hugger in the middle there. Anyway, it's wonderful. We take tours, people come down, they can go see their trees, they can see their plantation parcels, and really get a really good sense of what it is. And again, we talked about this. Teak is used because of its incredible properties, the hardness, the oils, the ability to push away mold and rot. These are the highest qualities of teak, which is why they've built ships out of teak and furniture out of teak for centuries. Right? This is it's not a fad. I mean, these are some of the most expensive yachts and boats in the world, and they use teak and they continue to use teak. What's a Chase Lounge here for $800 made out of teak, and a bath mat for $243, again, made out of teak, right? Bath mat, really nice, because again, patio furniture, something in your bathroom that's not gonna, rot. And for some crazy people who want a horse made out of teak, I don't know. Anyway, but again, it's used in high-end furniture. It's used in high-end construction. Some lofts in New York City with teak hardwood flooring, gates and fences. This, in fact, I think it was Anne Hathaway, the gentleman who we met at a conference that we actually shared about teak, and he became one of our teak owners. He had built a gate for Anne Hathaway out of teak. So again, the rich folks want to use it, the rich folks own it, and they take advantage of it. And then, of course, the Titanic with the teak chairs, and again, just centuries of use and centuries of value in this particular commodity. I want to share a little bit about maybe some of the granular information about why Panama, why Nicaragua, and there's some very, very specific growing conditions. I remember back in 1998, when I first started looking into teak, this was long before Google or anything like that. And the only way to get information was real information was to get it in books. And so I went to the Library of Congress. I went down to Washington, D.C. I lived near there. 2 separate times. I went down to the Library of Congress and I took out books. You can't take them out, but I brought them up to the reading room, read them, and studied them on 2 separate occasions. And what I found was that most of the books were referencing these 2 books that were written in the 1920s by the Brits. Well, here's the really cool thing. The Brits were in India and Indonesia and Southeast Asia, going all the way back to the 1600s, and they started plantation teak in the late 1600s. So now you've got this 300 years of statistical information. They were statisticians. They measured everything. They measured soil condition, elevation, temperature, rainfall. This correlated to that, and all latitudes and all this kind of stuff. And what they really found out was, what is the optimal growing condition for teak? Well, here it is right here. 3 to 5 months of dry season. Yes, teak grows in, if it rains every day of the year, teak does great, but it doesn't produce high quality teak. It produces big teak, but it's soft. The dry season, that 3 to 5 months of dry season, is what cures the teak and turns it into the hard wood that makes it so valuable in the marketplace. So 3 to 5 months dry season, no rain, 0 rain, leaves fall. It's deciduous in that sense. Well-drained, fertile, of course, but well-drained alluvial soil. Again, you can't plant teak and flat. You need it to be rolly hills so you get good drainage. Elevation below 600 meters. Again, that has to do with, in the tropics, it has to do with the temperature range, as you can see, 22 to 27. And then when it does rain, 1,500 to 2,500 millimeters, right? So you want a lot of rain in the rainy season, and you want a dry season with absolutely no rain. And so there are a few places around the globe where you get that. India, some parts of India being that, Nicaragua, the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, Pacific coast of Costa Rica, and then in Panama as well. So again, you've got certain areas that deliver this exact climate type that produces the highest quality teak. And again, the Brits studied it for 350 years and ran the statistics, and that's what they figured out. And one of our locations is this one. It's in Darien province of Panama. It was our very first plantation. Here we go, 1999. It was a cattle pasture, as you can see. We planted 40 hectares, 44,000 baby teak trees. I think if I did my math right. Anyway, a ton of baby teak trees were planted in 1999. 2000, they're starting to grow. By 2007, you can see they're getting up in size and height. 2013, this is one of our farm visits. Again, we love to take people out there. 2016, the trees are being thinned, of course, and getting taller and straighter, and just 2018. Let's see if we have anything more recent. Yep, 20. Okay, well, there we are. There's a whole gaggle of us on that trip. Anyway, but they're fun. We have a great time. We love taking folks there. People can, again, get out and see their trees. By the way, I think this is actually our 14-year-old plantation. In fact, it is our 14-year-old plantation. And you can see the size of the trees are smaller than our 23-year-old plantation. So yeah, anyway, there we go. And 22, yeah, it was raining that day, and the teak leaves are giant, so people can use them as an umbrella. So, all right. Again, in Panama, 2 opportunities, some 16-year-old teak that we purchased a couple years ago, and when it was 14 years old, a shorter close cycle, a shorter growth cycle, 9 more years to harvest, and then the baby teak coming in at 68.80 for a full 25 years. And one of the things we've seen people do is kind of ladder their investment. They might buy 1 or 2 of the 14 and maybe a few of the 25 years, right? So they can get some, and then it kind of just starts to offset year, every 10 years or 15 years, they're getting a harvest. So that's something that we see people doing. We've put together some bundles that make that really, really easy if that's something that you might like to do. That really important that you own the land. You get title to the land, you own the land, it's your land, and you get the trees, you own the trees, right? You own the land with the trees, you get title to it. And so when you do the harvest, you get to replant on your land, and then 25 years later, those trees, belong to you or your heirs or whoever it is. And again, this idea of laddering the profit over time. And one of the reasons, again, we just reiterate this, that teak was always or timber generally, but teak in this case was always for the uber wealthy, was because it was really expensive to go buy 100 acres or some big amount of property. Hire a professional forestry management company. I went to the Library of Congress and I did a lot of research there and other places, and I spent time interviewing forestry management companies and talking to people in the business, and I scratched the surface and learned 0.0001% of what I needed to know, but I learned enough that I could ask the right questions of professional management companies to know that they were going to do the job that I couldn't do, and we've outsourced that. And the nice thing is that when you do that and you distribute those costs across 100 folks who each share that cost in a plantation, or 200, whatever the number is, it makes it very, very affordable. And so that's what we've really done is brought in professional management to take care of the plantation, but distribute those costs so that it makes it very, very affordable to do so. This guy, Jacobo Melamed, when I first met him, he was in charge of the nursery for the baby teak plants back in 1998 and 99. He went with us to help us identify the property. He is now the general manager. So over the last 23 years, he's gone from, kind of field hand to our nursery manager to general manager of the entire business. So again, a great long-term relationship with him and with the company, and that's meaningful and it matters. For folks, one of the reasons we talked about in the goals was this idea of residency, that security, that freedom, and plan B. And for folks who can look at an investment size of $100,000 or more, there are residency options in Panama that come with your teak investment. And so for folks looking for that plan B or that freedom or that security, this is certainly a great way to get it. We helped hundreds of folks get their residencies in Panama with ownership of teak over the last maybe 8 or 9 years. So again, something to consider if you're looking for that freedom aspect, the residency piece, and the security that provides. Again, there's timelines involved with it. I'm not going to spend time on this too much. We would invite you to join the group of folks, several hundred folks who have already done this, many folks in the process of doing it right now. We'd love to have you come and be a part of our Teak family. Again, a little bit on Panama, but we won't spend any time on this today. It's a very diverse country with a lot of different environments, a lot of different things going on. In fact, let me just make one comment on that. The reason that's important is the country of Panama is not so dependent on any one thing. They've got the canal, obviously, that's huge. They've got tourism, they've got financial services, they've got different climates. And so what you've got is a really, really stable country politically and economically, and that bodes well for, long-term, 25 years, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, right? And that's what we're looking at. We want stability, economic and political stability over the long term. Grand Pacifica Teak, that's at our Grand Pacifica plantation in Nicaragua. We own a big piece of property. We bought 2,500 acres back in 2000. We've developed a resort community there. We've got about 150, 160 homes there now. A lot of them are solar, off-grid, oceanfront homes, condominiums. We built a golf course. But we have a lot of property at Grand Pacifica that may never become resort development. And we've taken about, 300 or 400 of those acres, something like that at this point, and we've planted teak. Our very first plantation there was about 4 years ago. I think we have over 300 acres of teak planted at this point. Some of it's older, like this, the 4-year-old teak that's up and growing, and then the brand new baby teak that we have going in right now. There's 150 parcels. They're quarter-acre parcels. $6,880, again, turns into about $94,000 over 25 years. And by the way, we actually have a business plan that lays all this out in great detail. And we would ask that if you're interested in owning a parcel or parcels or some of the bundles or obtaining a residency through the Teak ownership, ask us for a copy of our business plan. We would love to send that to you so that you can look at the numbers, you can do the analysis and see if it's something that's right for you. This is our nursery at Grand Pacifica, planting thousands, tens of thousands of baby teak trees, getting them planted out again in some cattle pasture. Again, this idea of about $7,000, turning into $94,000 over a 25 year time period. Same idea that you own the land, you have title to it, you own the trees, laddered profit, professional management. These are all the things that really matter. And just like Panama, there's the ability to get a residency in Nicaragua with your teak investment. I'm not going to spend time on that, but if you have an interest in a second residency, please let us know that. Our property consultants also, in many cases, are residency experts. Again, we've helped hundreds of people get second residencies overseas in conjunction with Teak and/or homes and condominiums as well. Our team is very, very familiar with that. We understand the process. We can help guide you into it, connect you with the legal folks that can help you then with the government paperwork to make it happen. So if that's something you want to do, we would certainly love to help you with that. The last thing I think I want to talk about is this idea of legacy. And again, if we've made enough money or we're making enough money and we can squirrel some money away, right, we have this incredible opportunity to steward wealth into the future. And I hate to be so cynical, but if you bought 25-year-old teak today and whatever, and you have some children and maybe they're 10 years old or whatever, so when the harvest comes, they're 35 years old, and let's say that they're deadbeats and they blow the money, right? They just take all that, they take that $100,000 and they blow it. The nice thing is that it's going to get replanted, and in 25 years. Maybe their kids are a lot more responsible than they were, or maybe they're all responsible. It doesn't have to be that way, right? But the point is that next generation would have another opportunity at today's dollars, 100,000. Who knows what it'll be then, right? And then in 25 years, the next generation, right? And so what we've really done is we've created this incredible way for not very much money today, $7,000, right, for the baby teak, right, to steward wealth into the future, to the kids, the grandkids, the great-grandkids, and leave a legacy and how you want to leave it for them, for your family. This is powerful. Again, if we've made enough money or we're making enough money and we can put some aside, this is a great way to ensure a much more positive and favorable future for your family way down line. And one of the things we hear from some people is, well, I don't have any kids, or whatever. And the point is you can leave this to, and you can endow something. If you have a favorite charity or a favorite organization, you can take this teak plantation and leave it to them. And every 25 years, they're going to get, the equivalent of $100,000 or whatever that is, right? And so we don't have to leave it to our families. We can leave this legacy to institutions that we care about and or our families. So again, this idea of leaving a legacy, powerful, powerful stuff. Anyway, it's a real tangible asset. It's a hard asset. It has value. One of the things that we know about teak, again, is it's been plantation raised and harvested for over 350 years. And we know the worth of teak. The last 100 years, I mean, think about this number, 100 years, the last 100 years, teak on average has increased in price 5.5% a year, every year for 100 years, right? I mean, a lot of things we just don't have a 100-year history on. With teak, we have a 350-year history on it, right? But the last 100 years, 5.5% value growth in teak on an average basis every year for 100 years. That's because it's a very valuable commodity. That's because the easy teak in the forests have been cut out, right? The plantations in India, they were there, but they weren't nearly enough. We're harvesting teak 8 to 10 times faster than we're replanting it. It's creating this incredible supply and demand imbalance. And it's got marvelous qualities, solid qualities that make it a highly desirable product now and most likely into the future as well. Request the business plan, a lot of the details. Who can read this slide? I can't read this slide. Anyway, we have some great bundles with some laddering of the teak. You get some 14, you get some baby, you get some in Nicaragua, you get some in Panama. We have some bundles that'll save you significantly. And let me just say this: if you're a significant investor, and I would say $100,000 and up, let us know, and we can actually customize packages and bundles for you as well. So again, I think we're at the end. The Chinese proverb, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, or 23 years ago when I did in Panama. And the second best time really is today. And I hope that many of you, if not all of you, will decide that you want to be owners of teak. You want to begin that generational wealth stewardship. You want to leave that legacy. You want to get those kinds of returns, those 11% IRRs, and you want to start your 25-year cash flow cycle for your family and for your legacy and for the institutions that you may want to leave that money to. Again, you can't go back in time and do it with me 23 years ago, but you can do it today. And I hope that many of you, maybe all of you, will decide that that's something that you do want to do. We do have trips. Again, you've seen pictures of folks there. Please come down and take one of our trips. See the trees. We'll go see the canal. We'll do some other fun stuff, maybe ride horseback. I don't know what we do. We do all kinds of stuff, fun things. But this is how you get a hold of us. We'll send you the information about the trips. And how many more slides are there, Michael? I thought I was done. I think I'm done. Yeah, I am done. All right. So I guess we have time for Q&A maybe. So Michael, I'll let you jump back in and help me with that if we have some folks who have any questions.
Hi there, Mike. Let's pull up some of the questions here. We do have Robin that mentioned that I love the idea of planting trees to make money.
Yeah.
Anthony.
By the way, that's not a question, Robin, but that's an awesome comment. So thank you. Yes.
We do have Anthony asking, what are the tiling fees? Is there any cost during the life cycle?
Yeah, so there is a maintenance fee. I can't remember the titling fees, but our property consultants will send you the exact information. It's all been detailed, and they'll send that to you. It's not very much in comparison to the actual property itself. And then there are maintenance fees. It depends on the plantation, the age of the plantation. Again, all of that is included in the, maybe it's actually on that slide. Can I go back? I don't know if I can go back now. Nope, I can't. Anyway, one slide back, I think there were, hang on, let me, thank you, Michael. Let's see. Oh, gosh.
I can zoom in here, Mike.
That is so tiny. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So the annual fees, there we go. $125 a year. One of them's 150, but I don't know which one that is anymore. The Panama newborn, Panama teenage, right? Titling fees. Is that on here somewhere, Michael? I don't know. Anyway, but again, $150 a year maintenance fees. Anyway, all the property consultants in the business plan have all of that information. Certainly, we want you to look at that before you make a decision to make the investment. But again, hundreds of people, high hundreds, 600, 700, 800 folks have gone ahead with this and take a look at the data, see if it makes sense for you, and if it does, we'd love to have you on board, Anthony.
And we are going to send out a copy of this to folks of the chart here. So if you'd like a copy, just let us know and we can get that to you as well. So Edward's asking, what is the process at the end of the 25-year cycle?
Sure, great question. So because the plantation has been certified as a reforestation product, we get some nice benefits. We don't have to pay any taxes in Panama. Now, for U.S. citizens, we are taxed on our worldwide income, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? But when we do the harvest in Panama, the first harvest at 25 years, because we've registered as a reforestation project, we've taken cattle pasture and turned it into forest, which is what Panama wants to do. We are exempted from all income taxes in Panama in that first harvest. So the harvest gets taken out, the trees get pulled. One of the requirements, because it is a reforestation program, is that it is replanted. And on that last slide, Michael had it up there, the cost to replant is about $300 in today's dollars. So you get $94,000. They're going to subtract $300 to replant your quarter acre, and then it just goes again. So the first harvest is a mandatory replanting, but again, $300, who cares? At the end of the second harvest, it's no longer mandated. There will be taxes paid to the government of Panama on that harvest. By the way, if you're a U.S. citizen, and maybe citizens of other countries, I don't know, but you would owe taxes on the profits from your investment that you would make at the harvest. But in Panama, there are no taxes on the first harvest, and that requires a replanting at that point for $300. And that's today's dollars. Look, inflation's going crazy. I mean, it might be $3,000 then, but maybe, yeah, whatever. I mean, I don't know what that'd be a night in a hotel room is $300 or 2 nights in a hotel room. So, and maybe then it's $1,500 a night to stay in a hotel with inflation. But the point is that it'll be a very, very minimal cost to replant, but it is mandated as part of the forest reforestation program.
We do have 2 questions that are pretty much asking the same here, Mike. It's mostly on illegal logging or just management of the land itself. So I'm going to pop over here back to this slide on Geoforestal.
Okay.
As the company that helps us to manage the land and take care of any security issues that we may have.
Yeah. And that was the whole point that I interviewed. I think I talked to 3 or 4 people on the phone, went down there and interviewed specifically two in-person companies, Geoforestal and one other, selected Geoforestal. By the way, the reason I selected Geoforestal over the other company, I think they were both actually competent companies from a professional management standpoint, was that Geoforestal actually produced the seedlings for almost all of the other forestry companies in Panama. And I thought, well, if these guys are the go-to for the seed stock, I think I want to use them for my forestry management as well. And that's the predominant reason we picked them. They were certainly qualified, and they have been qualified. They have done a tremendous job of managing our plantation, from thinnings to prunings to clearing. I mean, just all the different things. Security, I heard security brought up. All of those things are critically important, and Geoforestal has done a tremendous job for us for the last 23 years. And now is the contractor for the baby teak and the 16-year-old teak as well. So the relationship continues on with these guys.
Awesome. We do have one more question here, Mike. The quality of Nicaraguan teak versus Panamanian teak.
Yeah, it's fairly comparable. Again, you've got a certain set of latitudes. I think it's about 5 degrees to about 15 degrees seems to be the general latitude range where teak does very, very well. Elevation, again, under 600 meters, so you don't get the cooler weather. Rainfall with the dry season, all of those things. So truly, from even into the lower parts of El Salvador, along the coast, from El Salvador down to Panama, you've got a pretty comparable on the Pacific coast. Let me be specific. From El Salvador down to Panama on the Pacific coast, you've got pretty uniform, more or less, conditions for optimal teak growing. The Caribbean side, well, Salvador doesn't have it, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama on the Caribbean side, you actually have a lot of teak plantations there, and they're big ones, by the way. But it rains a lot, and it rains too much to produce the highest quality teak. And so, you can grow it. It grows faster, and you can actually get harvests in maybe 15 to 20 years as opposed to 25. But the quality of the teak is much, much lower because it doesn't have the hardness aspect that makes teak extremely valuable in the marketplace. But I would say Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panamanian teak on the Pacific side is fairly comparable in quality and value.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I just for some housekeeping here, we are going to send folks on the line, or if you were not able to join us live today, a copy of this recording via email to you at the end of this webinar. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at info@teakhardwoods.com, and we will have a property consultant reach out to you to answer your questions.
Yep.
Any last words from you, Mike?
Yeah, sure. And just know that, as we get to the new year, the trees all, have a birthday. And as they get older, the time cycle to harvest is much, is a year shorter. So the prices do go up at the beginning of the year. So if this is something you want to do, you've got plenty of time. You've got 6 weeks to, get the business plan, read it, study it, ask questions back and forth, do your due diligence. So you've got plenty of time to do it if it's something you want to do. But I would encourage you to do it between now and the end of the year to pick up this year's price before the trees, become 1 year older. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And thanks for everybody for joining us today. Do look out for that copy of today's webinar, and we will talk to you all soon.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.